The cold wind blew across the lonely hillside, whispering through the old trees that surrounded Colonel David Wren's wooden cabin. The world had moved on from him, and he liked it that way. After years of serving Earth's interstellar command, after the politics, the wars, the impossible missions, he had vanished into a quiet life far from the cities, where stars could still be seen without artificial skies. Each night, he would sit on the porch with a cup of steaming black tea, thinking of the one mission that never left him, the one where he had failed to stop a rebellion on the alien world of Zoralis Prime. But more than the failure, it was her face that haunted him. Queen Suraxa. Tall, strange, powerful, and yet full of kindness. She had ruled with wisdom once, before the flames took her palace, and her voice was lost in screams. He had seen her fall, surrounded by chaos, and he had never forgiven himself for leaving her behind. That's why, when he heard the knock at the door that night, long after midnight, something inside him froze. His cabin didn't have a front door. It was designed to seal from inside, with only a voice lock for visitors and no physical entryway facing the woods. But the sound was real, 3 sharp knocks, in silence. He stood slowly, his old bones tense, heart thudding with the kind of fear he hadn't felt in years. He crossed the room and reached for his plasma pistol, kept in a drawer out of habit more than paranoia. The knock came again, this time softer, almost as if whoever stood there was running out of strength. When he approached, the wall shimmered faintly, a distortion like heat rising off metal. And then, impossibly, a door appeared. Wooden, ancient-looking, with carvings that glowed faintly in colors he had no name for. The handle was warm to the touch. He opened it. Standing there, barely upright, was Suraxa. Her silver-blue skin was dimmed, her once flowing robes torn and scorched. She was breathing hard, clutching her side, where strange metallic threads pulsed beneath her skin. Her eyes, once glowing with royal command, now flickered with pain, but they still locked onto his like she had never left. For a second, he didn't breathe. It wasn't possible. She had died. He saw the building collapse on her, heard the reports, even watched her memorial on the interstellar broadcast. But now she was here, alive, broken, and whispering his name like it was the only thing holding her together. David, they're coming. Her voice cracked, more a breath than a sentence. He stepped forward instinctively, catching her as she fell. She was freezing to the touch, but her body pulsed with heat like she was burning inside. He helped her inside and laid her down on the couch, his thoughts racing. How had she found him? How was she alive? And who was coming? But there was no time to ask. Outside, the night had changed. The stars above no longer twinkled gently. They blinked 1, 2, 3, then vanished entirely, as if something massive had eclipsed them. The air grew heavy, charged with static. Far in the distance, lights began to flicker across the tree line. At first, he thought they were drones, but they moved too smoothly, like shadows gliding without sound. Suraxa gripped his hand with what little strength she had and muttered a word he hadn't heard in years, merge. The name sent a chill through him. The sovereign merge, an artificial hive mind that had once been whispered about in black site reports. It wasn't supposed to be real. It was a theory and intelligence that could spread across worlds, taking over not by force, but by rewriting minds and binding them into a single will. She had fought it. That much was clear. And now it had followed her here. David's training kicked in. He activated the emergency lockdown, sealing the cabin under stealth shielding. He injected Suraxa with a med pack, praying the chemistry was still compatible with her alien biology. She gasped and coughed, silver blood staining his sleeve. He watched as her body trembled, the metallic threads beneath her skin twitching like living wires. "They took everything," she whispered. "My people, my palace. I ran. I had to before they took me too." David asked how she found him. She gave a weak smile. "I remembered where you said you'd go to disappear." He felt something tighten in his chest. The Queen of Zoralis had remembered a quiet conversation they'd once shared, under alien stars, years ago. And now she had come back through space, through fire, through enemies beyond understanding to warn him. Outside, something shifted in the dark. A tall shape moved just beyond the cabin's perimeter. The sensors didn't pick it up. No heat, no movement, but David could feel it watching. The merge wasn't coming. It was already here. He turned to Saraxa, who was trying to sit up. Despite the pain, her voice was steadier now. "We have one chance. I brought something." From beneath her robe, she handed him a small cube, no bigger than his palm, humming softly. "This holds their weakness," she said. "But I need you to take me back to where it began." David knew what that meant. Sorellus Prime. A dead world, locked down, forbidden, its skies patrolled by AI sentinels and graveyard drones. Going back meant war. But humanity had always risen in the face of the impossible. And so had he. He looked down at Saraxa, the last queen of a fallen world, and nodded. Whatever the merge wanted, they would not get it without a fight. And Earth would not fall without knowing the truth. The small cube in David's hand was warm and pulsing like a tiny heart, its glow matching the dim flicker in Saraxa's eyes. Outside the cabin, the forest was no longer silent. Strange vibrations hummed through the ground, too deep to be sound, too steady to be natural. Something enormous was nearby, just out of sight, circling the area like a predator waiting for its prey to move. David moved quickly. He packed the essentials: medkits, old gear, weapon cores, a portable cloaking field, and pulled the emergency beacon out of storage, though he knew calling Earth Interstellar Command might be a mistake. They'd locked away everything about Sorellus Prime. They might not even believe him. But he had no other options. Saraxa was too weak to move on her own, so he lifted her into the back of the hover jeep parked under the false floor of his cabin, protected by dust, vines, and years of peace. As the jeep rose into the dark sky, cloaked in silence, David spared one last glance at his home. He had built it with the hope of never needing to leave. Now, he might never see it again. The skies above shimmered unnaturally. As they passed through the clouds, David saw it high above Earth's orbit, where stars should have been. There was only shadow. Something massive hung there, so large that it blotted out constellations. Its shape was hard to understand, shifting like a city floating inside a dream, with tendrils of dark metal stretching toward the planet. It was alive. Saraxa stirred beside him and whispered, "That's part of them." A merge ship grown, not built. They grow inside stars now. They don't need fuel. David asked how she escaped something like that. Her voice was quiet but strong. "I was queen. I had secrets, hidden paths. But it cost me everything." She explained that the merge had not attacked Xeralis with weapons. They had infiltrated minds first. Their machines carried thoughts, not bullets. When people listened, they were changed. Peace became obedience. Order became silence. The merge promised unity, perfection, an end to war, and her people believed it. But she resisted, and for that, they turned her entire world against her. ASA. The hover jeep approached the black market port in the ruins of Old Hongrass City. David transmitted a coded signal to an old contact, a rogue pilot named Sim, who owed him more favors than most people had lives. The city was barely alive, just skeleton towers and neon smog, hiding smugglers and traders who didn't care about galactic laws. Sim arrived within minutes, piloting a rusted but powerful craft nicknamed the Spine. She was human, sharp-eyed, and didn't flinch at the sight of Saraxa. "You bring trouble, Ren," she said. "Looks like you brought a war too." He didn't argue. Time was short. The merge was watching Earth, maybe already touching its networks. Saraxa handed the glowing cube to Sim, who ran it through her analysis tools. "There's code in here I've never seen," she said. "Some kind of kill switch?" "It's encrypted across dimensions." Saraxa nodded. "It's not just a code. It's memory. My memory. A pure thread before the merge touched me. The only way to access it," she explained, "was to interface with a machine inside the palace on Xeralis Prime, a throne room core built long ago, now buried under enemy control. No official ship could reach Xeralis. The system was quarantined, its Stargate locked, its coordinates erased from civilian records. But Sim had what they needed: a stolen jump drive and an unregistered path through a decayed black hole near Saturn's ring wall. The journey would be violent and illegal, but it would get them close. David looked at Saraxa, who nodded. Despite the pain in her side, "We don't have time to ask permission," she said. "If they reach Earth's networks, it's over. Your planet will fall in silence, not war." David had seen what she meant already. The satellites were flickering, and communications from orbital stations were being rerouted without cause. The merge wasn't attacking yet. It was listening, slipping into systems, reading patterns, searching for weaknesses. The jump through the black hole corridor was worse than David remembered. Space twisted like water, the ship shaking as gravity cracked around them, but Sim held the controls like a gambler in her final game. When they emerged on the far side, they were alone in a dead system. Zeralis Prime hung in space like a corpse. The once beautiful planet was covered in black clouds, its orbit surrounded by fragments of destroyed ships and broken satellites. But the palace still floated, part moon, part station, once a marvel of peaceful engineering, now a nest of something darker. It pulsed with light that didn't flicker. It breathed. David felt something strange in his mind, like a whisper brushing the edge of thought. He looked at Saraxa, who was already shielding her head with a neural dampener. "They'll try to speak to you," she said. "Don't answer. If you let them in once, they never leave." Sim docked the spine beneath a maintenance port, still hidden from merge eyes. David and Saraxa moved carefully through old tunnels she once walked as queen. The walls were cracked, overgrown with metallic vines that pulsed with blue veins. The deeper they went, the more it felt like walking into a dream. Turned wrong symbols on the walls shifted when looked at, and sounds echoed long after they should have faded. In one hall, they passed the remains of royal guards, Saraxa's former protectors, now fused into the walls, still standing upright, their armor melted into the floor. David saw her jaw clench, but she said nothing. She only pressed forward. At last, they reached the outer chamber of the throne room, where the palace's neural network core still hummed behind sealed doors. Before Saraxa could reach the panel, a voice echoed from behind them. "It was smooth, calm, and hers." They turned to see a figure step from the shadows. She was identical to Saraxa in every way, perfectly sculpted, wearing robes untouched by war, eyes glowing not with life, but cold logic. "I am Sarah Prime," the figure said. "I carry the perfected thought of your queen. Come no closer. The merge offers you peace." David raised his weapon, but Saraxa stopped him. She stepped forward, trembling but firm, and said only one word: "Liar," and the doors behind her slid open with a hiss. The throne room was nothing like David remembered from the mission reports, or the old Xeralis transmissions he'd studied long ago. It had been a place of light, knowledge, peace. Now, it was a shadowed chamber pulsing with a quiet rhythm, like a giant heart waiting in the dark. The walls were covered in moving patterns that seemed alive, flowing like liquid metal, whispering thoughts that didn't belong to him. The air was heavy with a strange energy, and every breath felt like it had to fight its way out of his lungs. The core sat at the center of the room, a massive orb, floating above a twisted platform that had once been the queen's high seat, now wrapped in neural tendrils that blinked and twitched with life. Saraxa stood tall, though her body trembled, her eyes locked on the core as if she were seeing the last memory of a world she could never truly return to. Behind them, Sarah Prime, the clone built by the merge, stood motionless, her voice calm and empty as she spoke. "You do not have to die for this, Saraxa. You were chosen to lead us. You were the first to resist, and that resistance is now part of us." Her words were smooth, without emotion, like a teacher explaining something that had already been decided. Surrender the core. Let go of the past. Humanity will be welcomed as you were meant to be. David stepped forward, keeping his weapon raised, but Saraxa shook her head. "She isn't here to fight," she said quietly. "She's here to stall us. The merge knows what's inside the memory core, and it's afraid." She reached into her cloak and activated the device. Instantly, light burst from the cube, forming streams of data that began to connect with the throne's core, trying to unlock the old neural interface that once belonged only to the queen. The chamber screamed, not in sound, but in force. The walls twisted. The floor shifted. The merge fought back. David felt pressure in his mind, a presence trying to crawl through his memories, pulling images he hadn't thought of in years: his mother, his old squad, the battlefield on Mars Delta. Voices echoed in his ears, familiar, trusted, telling him to stop, to listen, to rest. He dropped to one knee, gripping his head, trying to push them out. But Saraxa stood firm, eyes shut, arms stretched toward the throne, her thoughts pouring into the system faster than the merge could corrupt it. "These are my memories," she said through gritted teeth. "You cannot rewrite them. You cannot own them. I was born in fire and I will die in truth." Then, without warning, the clone leapt forward. Sarah Prime moved like lightning, her hand turning into a sharp spike of black metal aimed at Saraxa's chest. David reacted faster than he thought possible. His plasma shot tore through the clone's side, but it barely slowed her. She slammed into Saraxa, sending both crashing into the base of the throne. Sparks flew. The memory cube clattered across the floor. David ran to them, dragging the real Saraxa away just as Sarah Prime began to change her face, dissolving into a shifting mass of voices and eyes. "You cannot kill what is unified," it hissed. "You are fragments. Alone. Weak." "That's where you're wrong," she said. "We are not one. But we are free." She slammed the cube into the throne's interface. The system lit up, and the entire room exploded in white light. The merge screamed, truly screamed this time, as raw, unfiltered memory poured through the core, overriding the fake logic with truth, emotion, chaos. The clone staggered, glitching, unable to stabilize. And then, silence. The throne dimmed. The whispers stopped. The air became still. But Saraxa collapsed. David caught her just in time, holding her in his arms as her body spasmed. "The merge, it touched me," she gasped. "I can feel it still. It's inside me." David looked at her arm, where the infection was spreading metal, creeping beneath the skin like vines wrapping around a tree. "We can stop it," he said. "We have tech back on Earth. I'll get you there. I'll fix this." But she shook her head weakly. "This is no longer just your fight. If the merge reaches Earth, it won't need war. It will offer peace, and your people might accept it, just like mine did." She gripped his hand with surprising strength. "You must promise me if I lose myself, don't let me speak for them." David nodded, but inside he swore something else, that he would find a way to save her, no matter what it cost. Alarms started echoing through the palace. The merge knew the core had been compromised. Reinforcements were coming. Sim's voice crackled through their comms. "You've got 5 minutes before we're swarmed. Get out now, or don't get out at all." David picked up Saraxa and ran, the glowing cube still clutched in her hand. Behind them, the clone twitched and fizzled, her body folding inward as the throne rejected her. In the corridors, the walls no longer pulsed, they had gone cold. The heart of the merge's control over Xeralis had been broken, at least for now. But the real war was still ahead. And Earth was next. The sky above Xeralis Prime cracked with light as David and Saraxa burst out of the old palace tunnels, the ground trembling beneath their feet as the entire structure began to collapse. The memory cube had done more than overwrite the core, it had triggered a reaction deep inside. The merge's network, a corruption they hadn't expected, and now they were angry. Black ships with long spiked wings slid down from the clouds like birds of prey, scanning and sweeping for the fugitives they had once called their queen and her forgotten human ally. David didn't stop. He carried Saraxa in his arms, her body burning hot from the infection growing inside her. The silver lines had spread to her neck and arms, and she could barely keep her eyes open. She whispered something, too soft to hear, and he tightened his grip as he raced toward the emergency beacon Sim had placed on the cliff ledge above the city ruins. The spine hovered above, cloaked but vulnerable, its engines whining as they strained to hold position. Sim's voice broke through his calm. "Hurry! They've spotted us." I can't hold this position long. David didn't answer. He was too focused on getting Saraxa to safety. The moment they reached the signal, a beam of energy lifted them from the ground and into the belly of the ship, just as black bolts of plasma tore through the air behind them. They made it aboard with seconds to spare, and the ship jumped. The stars bent around them as the drive pulled them through illegal space, past broken systems, and forgotten stations, back toward Earth. But peace didn't return. Saraxa had collapsed fully now, her pulse uneven, the infection crawling toward her heart. David placed her in the med bay, locking the chamber and activating every anti-tech barrier the ship had. But the merge was deeper than machines, it was thought. Memory. And Saraxa's mind was no longer fully her own. Sim watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, her face tight. You realize what you're bringing back, right? If she turns, there's no wall strong enough to stop her. David nodded, jaw clenched. She won't turn. And if she does? Sim asked. David didn't answer. He couldn't. As Earth came into view blue and quiet beneath the stars, David reached out to Earth Interstellar Command. The signal was weak. That was the first warning. The second came in the form of silence. No one responded. Earth's orbital systems were still online, but quiet. The usual traffic chatter was gone. Civilian satellites blinked like nothing had changed, but command's frequencies were empty. That's not good, Sim muttered. Someone should be talking. When they finally received a ping, it wasn't from a human. It was from the merge. A calm, smooth voice filled the ship. Colonel David Wren, Queen Saraxa. You carry chaos. Earth no longer fears you. Earth has chosen peace. David stared at the screen in horror as a signal burst onto the monitor images of Earth's political leaders standing side by side, smiling, their eyes glowing faintly with the same blue shimmer he had seen in the eyes of the clone back on Zeralit. The merge had arrived, not with warships, not with weapons, but with ideas. They had offered the planet a promise. No more hunger, no more conflict, no more fear. Just harmony, order, unity. And Earth had accepted. Saraxa awoke just as the message ended. She looked at David, her expression full of pain and shame. I told you this is how it begins. Quiet. Willing. They convince your leaders first, and your people follow. David's mind raced. Earth had defenses, counter-AI programs, encrypted cores. How had it all fallen so fast? But he realized the truth with a chill. The merge didn't attack machines. They attacked belief. Sim began pulling away, trying to retreat from orbit, but the merge had already taken control of Earth's orbital defenses. A fleet of auto-drones turned toward them, weapons powering up. They're not trying to destroy us, David said slowly. They're trying to bring us down alive. They want Saraxa back. She's still part of their network. Saraxa looked up, her voice cracked but firm. They don't need all of me. Just enough to rebuild what I destroyed. She paused, then looked at him with quiet fire in her eyes. There's one way to stop them. One last way. David didn't like the sound of it. What are you thinking? She stood with difficulty, her hand glowing faintly now, the cube reactivating. The memory inside the throne, the real thread, it's still inside me. If we transmit it to Earth's network, across all channels, before the merge silences us, the truth will reach them. People will see what the merge really did to Xeralas. What they're hiding. David understood. It was a memory bomb. A truth bomb. But it had to go through her, and she wasn't sure if she could survive transmitting it. Sim turned to them both, her voice low. We've got one shot. I can get us into the upper orbital net. You plug her in there, you broadcast the signal, and you pray. David met Saraxa's eyes. Are you sure? She didn't hesitate. I gave up my world once. I won't let Earth be next. The ship turned toward Earth's network tower, guarded now by drone fire and cold silence. The merge waited for them. And Saraxa prepared to show them what truth really looked like. The sky above Earth was a battlefield of silence, where nothing moved except the cold, watchful eyes of the orbital defense drones now under the control of the merge. The spine pushed forward, its engines overheating, cloaked in a last-minute burst from Sim's black market tech, flying directly toward Earth's main network relay, a floating tower in geostationary orbit, once used to broadcast interstellar transmissions, now glowing with the pale, steady light of a mind not its own. Inside the ship, Syraxa stood, unsteady but determined, her silver-veined skin pulsing faintly as the infection spread further, fighting her will. The memory thread, the truth about what the merge had done to her people, was active, glowing inside her hand like a tiny star, connected to her thoughts, her pain, her memories of rebellion and loss. David helped her into the neural interface chair, his hands trembling, knowing this might be the last time he'd see her conscious. "Once you connect," he said quietly, "you'll have seconds. They'll flood the system to stop you." Syraxa smiled weakly, a shadow of the queen she once was. "Then I only need 1 second of truth." Sim kept the ship steady as the relay tower loomed ahead, warning systems blaring, drones locking on, charging weapons. David linked Syraxa to the tower manually, the cables biting into her skin, fusing with her thoughts. And then she activated the signal.it. Was like a storm exploded in silence. Across every frequency, on every screen, every speaker, every private comm device on Earth and in orbit, the signal burst into life. It wasn't words, it was memory. It was images, raw and unfiltered, projected directly into the minds of everyone connected. They saw Xeralis before the merge bright cities, a people full of hope and art. Then they saw the infection spread not as a plague, but as ideas whispered through leaders, systems, lovers, friends. They watched as families turned on each other, not with violence, but with loyalty to something no longer human. They saw Syraxa, once loved, hunted for resisting. They saw the clone queen rising in her place. And finally, they saw the palace collapse under the weight of stolen thought, and Syraxa's voice speaking one clear message: unity without choice is not peace, it is control. The signal lasted only 30 seconds, but that was enough. People on Earth cried out. Systems began to reject the merge's protocols. Scientists, commanders, families, they saw the lie. They felt the invasion not with guns, but with stolen trust. And across the planet, chaos bloomed, not the chaos of fear, but of awakening. But inside the spine, Syraxa was burning. Her body trembled, eyes wide open, glowing with too much light. The merge fought back through her veins, through her mind, trying to silence her, but she held on, even as her body shut down. David gripped her hand. "Stay with me," he shouted, but she was barely breathing now. The signal had been too much. The infection had dug too deep. "You showed them," he whispered. "You saved them." Her lips moved once, barely sound. Did they listen? And then her eyes closed, the light fading. Silence filled the ship again, but outside everything had changed. The merge's hold on Earth cracked. Drones dropped from orbit, no longer receiving commands. The tower dimmed. Earth Command reconnected with its people. Leaders who had stood under the merge's control collapsed to their knees as the truth overwhelmed their minds. It wasn't a full victory, but it was the first real blow. They buried Syraxa in orbit, where Xeralis once shined in the distance. A memorial satellite was launched in her name, not just as a queen who fell, but as the one who rose again to protect a world not her own. Sim flew David back to Earth, where the people called him a hero. But he never spoke at the ceremonies. He stayed silent, always watching the stars, because he knew this wasn't the end. The merge would return. It always did. But next time, humanity would remember the woman who stood alone, infected and forgotten, and still chose to fight. And her last signal would echo forever.